There's only one thing on this earth more powerful than evil, and that's us.
Hi guys, this is Claire Kramer, aka the Great Glorificus, and you are listening to the Buffy Back Issue Bed.
Welcome to the Buffy Back Issue, in the show we go through all the Buffy and Angel comics that are canon chronologically. I'm Zach.
And I'm Emily.
And today, since the entire Buffy canon has been completed, maybe kind of until things happen in the future, we'll see.
Depending
Today,
on when this is coming out.
Right, it's completed for the moment.
We are joined by main series artist Georges Jeanty, going through the credits of everyone, including television and comics. Georges, am I pronouncing your name right?
Yes.
I've been
going.
saying that all along, and I'm so terrified. I was like, am I doing it wrong?
No, it's like two of us.
Fantastic. Georges has done the third most credits in far of the entire Buffy canon. Whedon has him beat by a bit. Christos Gage has him beat by a bit, but Georges Jeanty is the biggest artist, and I think in the terms of comics, we can say director of all time. You are the number 3 credited worker on all of these books.
Oh, well, now I don't think Skype can handle my inflated ego here.
I have you down as 58 issues, not including covers that you did for issues you didn't do the interiors on.
Wow. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, I did do every cover for every issue I've ever done. So, yeah, that was 40, 25, 60 some odd covers there has to be.
Yeah, you did more than you were on the interiors for. Whedon has you beat at 80 total credits, Christos Gage at 71, and you are at 58.
I wonder if that's going to be a trivia on Jeopardy.
Wow, that would be so specific. I wish it were.
Look, that's what my day was today.
Like, I'll take Buffy canon for 500.
Oh my gosh, you would win so much money. I wish that were actually a Jeopardy thing.
Who has the third most credits? But still, I mean, considering something that started in 97, that's a hell of a feat.
It is, and I remember Cliff Richards was really prolific doing of the artwork on it before I ever came to the scene. So it wasn't my goal to beat him, but it was my goal to be. I really want to be known for this, So because I thought Cliff was really known for it, I thought, man, that's so envious. I really want that position.
Yeah, because he did a bit in season 9.
Yeah, he came on for a couple fill-ins. Yeah.
Well, I guess first and foremost, the main question is, how did you initially get this job? This is going back 11 years now, if you want to remember.
Very back, yeah.
Ago.
Oh, yeah, it's so far back, I don't even know. It's a Throwback Thursday question at this point.
Oh, yeah.
I was working actually on a book called The American Way, funny enough, with another writer-director called John Ridley at the time, who wasn't as well known back then, but he had done some movies and whatnot, and this book we were doing, it was an independent creator-owned type of a thing about the government sanctioning superheroes in the 60s, and it was called The American Way. And apparently at that time, Joss was reading this book, that, unbeknownst to me, of course. And when he had gotten his thing together to say, hey, I want to do some more Buffy, Dark Horse was already publishing the book, as you well know. He approached Scott Alley, who had been the editor from the get-go, that he'd love to do some Buffy if they were open to it, because technically Joss had never actually written any Buffy tales. Of course, he had done the Frey series and the Tales of the Vampire and Tales of the Slayer, but he'd never actually written Buffy per se. So he approached them saying, hey, I'd love to do this. How about I want to do it after the show? How about we call it season 8? And they went off and running from there. And Scott told me later, he's like, yeah, well, when Joss calls and says this, you're like, okay. And you hope for something, you hope for a script, you hope for something to come in. And he's like, man, like a week later, I had the whole first arc in my lap. And I was just giddy with myself, as an editor would be with when you can't really reprimand somebody like Joss. If he doesn't turn in his work, how do you punish him? You go, well, if you don't do this, we're not going to let you write any more comic books for us.
That's crazy.
So they went on, and then they got to the process of, okay, so who are we going to get to draw this? Now that you've done it, who are we going to get to draw it? And Joss and Scott were talking, and he said, well, I don't know this guy. And here's a list of people, but I really like this guy. I've been reading this book called The American Way, and I'd love to see if this guy would be interested. Could we get him? And Scott didn't know who I was. So from a mutual friend, Jason Pearson, he had gotten my email and then contacted me and said, hey, Joss would love to have you draw this book called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And, when you're approached with something like that, your initial response is, yeah, right. after that, after a couple of emails thereafter, he said, "No, really, this is a real deal, and Joss really wants you on the book." And I said, "Okay, well, that's cool, but that's a little heavy-handed to say somebody like Joss Whedon to use his name and throw it around like that, you know." And I got so bold to a point. I said, "Well, you know what? If Joss wants me so bad, why don't you have Joss email me?" And the very next email was Joss Whedon going, "Hey, how you doing? I really want you on this book."
Oh my gosh.
And
Power play.
That's crazy.
because I didn't believe it. You know how when somebody says,
I wouldn't either. Yeah.
you know, yes, Steven Spielberg really wants you for this part. And you're like, come on, seriously, you're just using that as a tool. And they're like, no, he really does. And man, I could not have humbled myself any quicker in the following email saying, "Oh, how much I love your work, Mr. Whedon, and thank you so much for thinking of me. And this is very kind of you. And I hope I didn't insult you in any way," and all of that. So, it makes me look better than I should, but that's how that came about. They actually came and found me to do the book. So I was forever grateful. And yes, it's been forever since last 10 years associated with me, part of my life. So it's been pretty good.
Did you ever watch the show before?
I didn't. I'd seen a couple of episodes. I saw the one, God, and I can never remember the titles. I remember feeling and scenes better than I remember titles.
Me too.
It was the one. It was the one John Ritter was in. Was that not the body? It wasn't the body.
That's a terrible episode. That is. What is the title? Yeah, it's the one where he's the evil stepdad robot.
Is it like Ted or something?
Oh, it's just called Ted. That's the name of the episode.
Oh my gosh!
Ted.
I actually got one. I never get these.
That's a terrible. What's funny is that's a Whedon episode, and it's one of the worst ones he ever did.
Oh wow!
You know, not to throw him under the bus, but that episode's awful.
I forgot that John Ritter was in that. Wow.
Yeah, he got smashed in the face with a shovel, and he was all robotic, and he like killed all of his previous wives. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I was a John Ritter fan, so when I saw, oh, hey, John Ritter's going to be on this show called Buffy, I should watch this because I like him.
I'm so sad that I just threw that episode under the bus, but that's not a good one.
That's true, though.
Sorry, everyone.
Yeah,
That's
you guys
funny.
don't hold any punches. I'll give you that.
Sorry.
It's mostly me, I think. But I also love this stuff. I hope that comes through in what we do.
If not in your voice, then certainly in your figurines behind you.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
People don't get to see these. Yes, they hang out with us.
Yeah, you can see Cordelia, Wesley, Spike, Willow, Jane, Mal, another Mal.
Yes.
You've
There's
got the
quite a bit-
Whedonverse represented.
Yeah.
And in front of us.
I was going to say, and you don't see the pages that are hanging in front of us.
You can't see the comic art that's going the other direction.
So is it your goal to get something from everyone who's drawn from Buffy, or how does that work?
Right now, Emily, earmuffs. You can't hear
I
us.
know. I don't always know what there is, and all of a sudden I'd be like, oh yeah, that page I got it 2 months ago.
I have some Serenity stuff. I have Buffy and Angel stuff. I don't have I'd like to get something from every season. I am lacking in season 8 and season 11.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? How are you tonight, dear?
But, I mean, we do have a fair amount. Let's not.
And I have one prop from the Serenity movie, and I have one prop from the Buffy TV show.
Oh, yeah? Which one?
You can grab it if you want him. It's behind
Well, for
you.
our listening audience, what...
It doesn't really... This is a bowl that was in the galley. There were 6 of these. There is a shot of the operative in the Serenity movie drinking tea.
Yeah.
I have a 1 in 6 shot that this is one of them.
Yeah, okay.
I can't say if this is the one that he drank, but there is a 1 in 6 chance that it is. And then I have a book from the Magic
Oh,
Box.
really? Okay. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Oh, when they were...
Well, just because, they have a billion of those books.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have one of those.
Is it an actual book, or is it just filled with blanks?
It's all blank
Ah,
pages.
gotcha.
What's funny, at the front of it, there is a stamp that says, the Magic Box, but then, there's maybe 150, 200 pages in there. They're all just empty pages.
So it's a journal.
Why did you feel the need to stamp page 1?
I don't know. So then they could sell it later and be like, look, it came from the Magic Box.
I guess that's what happened, because I bought it.
I know, right?
It comes with a letter of authenticity.
Exactly.
So, in the course of all these comics, I feel like there were kind of 3 big controversies. I'm throwing that in air quotes because I personally, wasn't terribly upset. Because that's just me. Because I feel like the Buffy and Satsu thing, the Buffy and Angel, like space sex, and the Buffy abortion thing were kind of the three big controversies of the books. I was just curious what it was like dealing with that on the other end of things.
That, and I think you forgot about Giles being killed. That was a huge thing.
I was fine with that. I'm a big Giles being killed fan.
He's a big fan of people dying in stories, and I'm like, nobody needs to die ever.
That just upped the stakes for me in a big way, because it was like, yeah, they're all fine. Oh no, Giles is dead.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, we can take them in order or however you want.
Or just, I was just curious what the kind of feedback for that was for any of those kind of like controversial ones, and ones that I was literally fine with. Maybe not the robot pregnancy thing, because I think it's a terrible metaphor. But beyond that,
the first with Buffy sleeping with a woman, that was a huge deal. And funny enough, that came around the time where I talked to Joss over the phone and emailed him a few times at that point, but I'd never actually met him. And I think that was around the time San Diego was coming around, the Comic-Con. And I was going there, and we all had a very nice lunch. Me, Joss, Scott Alley, and one of the assistant editors whose name escapes me at the moment. And we were all just going for lunch and talking a little bit more, and Joss kind of wanted to get a feel. Because the funny thing about season 8 and doing all this, I really personally felt that this was always a love letter to Joss's love letter to Buffy, this girl that he really loved and really cared for. And the only reason he was coming back was because he missed her and he wanted to continue her adventures in his head, as I'm sure they had been, but actually out into the world like it used to be. And we were sitting around talking, and he didn't know, at that point, we didn't know season 8 would be 40 issues. I honestly thought it would be 12 issues and leave it at that. But he was having so much fun at that time that we just, we said, okay, maybe 12, and then maybe 25. Okay, maybe 30. Okay, now we really got to stop it at 40 because we're going into so many years. It seems a little weak to say that it's a season anymore. But because Joss had gotten all of the writers, or most of the writers involved in the TV show, involved in the comic, he was just having such a great time doing all of this.
Yeah, because all those guys came back for like at least to do a one shot.
Yeah.
A number of them.
Yeah, with the exception of David Fury and the woman, Marty Noxon. Yeah, Marty. Yeah, everybody came out, and they were busy doing other things, or else they would have come back. So it almost was a trifecta for Joss in doing so. But that's why
the fact that I pulled that out instantly, if that doesn't clear me off as a fan, that I was just like, oh, the woman writer, Marty Noxon, because I know Jane Espenson did.
Well, yeah, Jane did a lot. Yeah, and yeah, that just proves to you how much fun these guys were having. They weren't really thinking structure; they were just thinking, oh my God, it's been 4 or 5 years since I've written this. This is so great to come back to. And trust me, nobody came back for the paycheck, because I'm sure there is a world of difference for what you get for comics and what you get for teleplays.
Oh yeah, season 8 very much felt like there's a party and everyone's invited.
Exactly. We don't know when this party is going to end, but exactly, everyone is invited. So anyway, we sit down for lunch and we're hanging out, and he's like, so what do you like to draw? And Joss is very much into, this is a collaborative effort. I really want to get a feel for what you want to do and all that. And he's like, all right, let me just give you a basic overview of what's going to happen. And then, you tell me where maybe we can inject some things that you might want to do. And he had mentioned this whole, Buffy's this, and this, and Buffy goes here, and Buffy goes there, and then she sleeps with a woman, and then Buffy goes here, and then does that. And I was like, whoa, hey, what? What happened? And, it's almost as if him and Scott had talked about this before, because they were really waiting for a reaction, going, aha, we got him on this one. Okay. And they said, yeah. And I was, at that point, I'd become pretty familiar with the series. They had sent me season 6 and 7, so I just tore right through those on DVD. I was like, Joss, you can't do this. I was really speaking for it's sort of an Ava Perón type of thing. I was speaking for the people here because they were not being heard. I was telling him, Joss, how can you do this? You know better. I mean, you're going to have so much flack that Buffy is gay. And he explained it to me in such a way that he was like, well, remember when you were in college and you experiment a little and, you kind of, and I'm like, yeah, with drugs maybe, but not with the same but then, obviously that does happen. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. And I was like, wow, man, I got to tell you, that's pretty bold. But, I guess that's why you're here, to shake things up. So that's how pretty much it came to be. And, he had planned it the whole time, because if you'll remember in the first arc, Satsu was the one who actually, kissed her. And the cinnamon thing became an issue later. Yeah. So if there were a few things he had planned. He always planned that Dawn was going to be a giant, that Buffy was going to sleep with a woman. And what else? That he wanted everybody to come back at some point. But of course, at that point, IDW still had the property to Angel, which had Spike as well. So they could not use those characters and any character that was on the Angel show. So he was very adamant about getting that back eventually.
Okay. So I'll ask a question about that, because this is more of a you question than it's a me question, but I don't think you'll ask it.
I don't know what the question is.
Nail polish and rings. Why is Spike so early 90s? What guys, remember when he came back? It was like the off-panel stuff. He's like, enough of this. If you got questions about Twilight, you ask Spike. There's this full page splash of him, and he has like 1 billion rings on and this stupid black nail polish. Was there any discussion of like, why isn't Spike over the 90s yet?
Well, which, the 1890s or the 1990s?
Fair question.
That was probably me. I was looking at early publicity photos of Spike or James in his garb. And a lot of us were arguing, well, if he comes back, what would he be wearing? And Allie wanted him in the button-down shirt. And I was thinking...
Yeah, the red one. I know the red one you're talking
about.
I
was thinking more just the T-shirt type of a thing. And so we were going back and forth, and I thought, well, if he's coming back, let's really go all the way and just make it as if he were in season 2, coming back, that he was, in rings and he had his fingernails painted black. And I just thought that was kind of very, rebel type of a thing. So him coming in, I wanted to give him a look, because I wasn't as familiar with Spike at that point.
I mean, that's such a classic Spike look. Like it's Spike.
Well, I mean, especially for comics, the idea of like him throwing on that red button up is also going to be a color break in between black on
exactly black. Which of course they obviously in the show they dropped it later on, and in the comics
it works more in like image more than it on film versus comics. It definitely I think works a little bit better in comics. You need that color
exactly break. And that was the only reason I did it, because funny you should mention that scene. Joss is a very big movie guy, and I am too, so we developed this language, because I said early on in his scripts, he'd sometimes mention little things. And I said, Joss, I'm a big movie aficionado. So if you're ever talking about something and say, hey, remember that scene in Superman where this happens? I'll probably get it more often than not. And that Spike scene, he was like, do you remember that Mad Max 2, Beyond Thunderdome, when all of the townspeople were coming to him and he says, if you want to get out of here, you got to talk to me type of a thing. And that's totally where we got that from. He's like, that's pretty much how I want it. Spike is just standing there and looking all cocky, just like Mel Gibson, and that's how the look I want to project.
I mean, I got a big love for Mad Max that you do not have.
Yeah, I don't really get it that much, but that's cool.
I mean, they're guy testosterone movies. Yeah, I can see that.
We watched one at a drive-in. It was lovely.
Yeah, the last one we saw that. Well, so like we teared up for different reasons. We went to a drive-in, and we saw it was
San Andreas.
It was a double feature of San Andreas and Mad Max, and you were crying at San Andreas.
At The Rock. The Rock had an emotional speech.
And like, my daughter died, and then I'm like just rolling tears at Mad Max. Like, this is the most beautiful thing ever. Look at it, the cinematography. And you were like, I hate this. Why aren't we
I feel you. I can't keep a dry eye when I watch Love Actually. I hate to say it.
Oh my gosh, I love Love Actually so much.
You can nerd out about that, but let's take a turn and nerd out about Godzilla.
Oh, you had to bring that.
Because you seem to be a fan.
I am. Huge fan, yeah.
Who was... Oh, that was Drew Goddard who did that.
Yes, with the Mechadon.
And the two of you combined seem to be big into that.
Yeah, funny enough, when all that was said and done, he asked for the page of the splash of Mechadon. He's like, dude, if you give me this, I will not sell it. I will not do anything. I want this page. This is the page. Because we talked a little bit, and I said, well, all right, I get how we want it to look like a Mechadon. And I tried to keep it as authentic as the Mechagodzilla, but I for some reason, there's always something that sticks in my crow about logistics. And I couldn't figure out the tail. I'm like, well, why would Mechadon need a tail? because Dawn doesn't have a tail, and Mechagodzilla only had a tail because Godzilla had a tail. And he's like, oh no, we will have a tail. The tail will be there.
To be honest, I agree with him. She needs a tail.
Because you'll notice there's a stupid little thing on Mechagodzilla's arm, and it's an MG. If you'll notice, it's an M over a G, of course, to stand for Mechagodzilla. So in that, if you look in the comic book, I have an MD for Mechadon in that. So yeah, I love that. I was pretty authentic with my interpretation.
Out of here, is there any kind of Easter egg or little thing that you snuck in that no one has noticed that you did?
I thought,
besides Mechadon.
Mechadon. I do love that.
I don't know why, but I thought nobody would ever notice the TARDIS in one of the arcs. And that was the thing that people seem to bring up the most. I know I put Hellboy's crest on a shield in one of the castles.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
And I know that Buffy was wearing like the Doctor's daughter outfit.
Yeah. No, you're right. And that's funny because that was a sort of a nod to Doctor Who, because I had just seen those episodes. And I knew that Russell T Davies was a huge Buffy fan, because if you'll notice, Torchwood is structured a lot like Buffy. Instead of a hellmouth, there's a rift. And he was very intentional about doing it that way because he really wanted to imitate that type of thing. And so I just thought, well, turnabout is fair play. I thought the Doctor's daughter looked a lot like Buffy. And I always wondered too, and if I ever meet Russell T, I always mean to ask him, was the Doctor's daughter an intent to look like Buffy? Because I really thought she did. So I just naturally put her in what the Doctor's daughter wore when Buffy got superpowers.
And James Marsters is in both shows.
And James was in both, exactly. Oh, you know what? I should have asked him.
You're never going to see Torchwood.
No.
It's fine for the first 2 seasons, then it goes real downhill real fast.
We're trying to make it through Doctor Who, but it's just, life is very busy.
What season are you on?
And so, I don't even know.
3rd of the new series.
Is it still Tennant? Or, Tennant is.
Yeah. So that's the Martha Jones.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, no, there's coming the...
Yeah, we've been at this for a little while, but we're just busy.
No, it's good. It's just...
Getting through a show it's a commitment.
A commitment.
I would argue that Weeping Angels episode is probably some of the best sci-fi ever.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. She's not there yet, but yeah, I love that.
Oh, is that the one I'm going to cry on? I cry on everything.
No, you're going to cry. You're going to cry at the end. You're going to bawl your eyes out.
It won't be pretty.
When they spend 10 minutes killing him.
Oh, yeah,
okay. It's not a quick well, he's gone now. It's a solid 10 minutes of let's be sad.
And it's funny you say that. I'm a Doctor Who fan from way back in the day. My doctor was Tom Baker in the 70s when I was a little kid, and Sarah Jane Smith. And when they had that episode, funny enough, with Anthony Head.
Yeah, because he was up for the role. He was what's his name? Whoever the 8th one was, I'm blanking on the name.
Oh, was he up for the role of the Doctor? Really?
Yeah, for the TV movie that happened, and I'm gonna remember it the second we're done recording. What's his
name?
I
didn't know that. Well, that's cool.
It obviously didn't happen, and Buffy might not have happened otherwise because those were around the same time.
Oh, interesting.
Because he was known for Folgers commercials.
Oh, was he?
And then he was up for the 8th Doctor. Paul McGann.
Paul McGann, that's who it is.
Paul McGann. He was up for the Paul McGann role that was the TV movie that didn't go.
Gotcha.
Wow, you have so many useless facts in your brain.
I know.
That is fascinating.
That is all worthless. No one cares.
But I just
oh boy, you remembered Paul McGann's name.
To your thing of crying, man, I cannot. For some reason, I can't get through that episode without crying. It's not that it's sad, but it's just the idea of, and it's true, like the old girlfriend type of a thing. And she,
I love that, she moved on.
And she just wonders, did I do something wrong? Why did you leave me? What happened? And here I spent my whole life wondering what happened to you. And you're a tough act to follow. And for some reason, I can't watch that episode without crying.
No, that is.
Oh, I'm sure I'll cry when we get there. No worries.
I never watched the spinoff. I don't really want to though, just because I know that she unfortunately died at a young age.
Oh yeah,
so
the
I don't
Sarah.
Really want to watch her spinoff.
The Sarah Connor Chronicles.
I have no interest in watching it.
Yeah, some of it's good. Some of it's actually really, really good. They bring in.
I'm sure. I just don't want to do it just knowing kind of it has a limited run.
Yeah, it's only 4 seasons, I want to say, and they're only 8 episodes or so, 6 or 8 episodes, and they're very short, and they are geared more towards children. You can definitely see that. But they do mention at some point what happened to all the other companions and where they ended up, like Ace and the one right before Sarah, who was with John Pertwee. She actually comes on the show at some point. So it's interesting from that point of view, but all of this has nothing to do with Buffy. So we should continue.
There's some Pertwee over there if you're curious.
Oh, I believe you.
If you just look slightly to your right, we got some Pertwee over there.
I believe all of these things.
On the DVD shelf.
Yeah. What was your favorite part about working on Buffy?
The favorite part. The favorite was just
for everyone who just checked out.
Let's bring it back to Buffy just for a second. I like going off on other tangents.
It was great. It was just, everybody says, oh, because it's funny, at the time when we were trying to get people to come in, everyone was kind of like, yeah, no, I really don't want to do Buffy. I've got this Batman thing, or I've got this Spider-Man thing. Everything else was cooler than Buffy, just as a title, because it hadn't really proved itself yet. And I was just bowled over by the writing. All the writing was so good because everybody who came in was told to write as if it were an episode of the TV show. Don't write it like it's a comic book. Write it like it's an episode that you always wanted to do. Like use a submarine, or we can go to Tibet, or, anything like that. And everybody came
or
in.
all of the above.
Yeah, or all of the above.
Tibet.
Yeah.
Like, gosh, nothing terrible has happened to Tibet. Let's just make it worse.
So my favorite was just the writing. The writing was so spot on, and the language, of course, is there, that it was a joy to read the script before it ever became visual. And I felt a real honor to be one of the first few people to have read, a Jane Espenson or a Stephen DeKnight or a Drew Goddard script, and it was really cool.
Yeah, because she really shone through in that Oz arc that she did. That was kind of, I think, the highlight of what she did on the book.
Yeah, Jane is great. Josh paid her such a great compliment. He said, I wish I was as quick as she was and talented as she is. I'd do a whole lot more work if that were the case.
There's this one line that really stuck with me. I don't think I'm going to get it exactly, but it was just, you could tell when show writers were on there, it was a line that Willow had that was like, hey, Buff, do you want to hold the baby? He's a real master of patty cake or something along those lines.
Yeah, but don't let him hustle you or something.
When it came through, I'm like, yeah. It was just 100% Willow. I'm like, man, you can really feel that show writers are on this book.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it was so fun for us to read it, is because there's so much love that comes through in the writing, obviously in the art as well. Like, there's just so much love for these books and for these characters. And it's not just a job. It's clearly that people care so much about this world and they want it to continue, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, that's why I'm dumbfounded when people I talk to and I ask, hey, have you read Buffy? It's continued if you were a huge fan. And, of course they'll start out, oh my God, I am the biggest Buffy fan. You don't realize. And of course you're going, well, what did you think of the comics? Oh, no, I haven't read the comics, but I'm just such a huge fan. Like, well, if you love that, the authenticity is there. How can you would love the comics just as much as the TV show to a certain degree? And it's almost a quest to get people to read the comic book because it's in a different format, and I never understood that.
I mean, that first book, looking back at the numbers, issue 1 did over 100K. That was a top 10 book that month.
Yeah, I didn't realize, and Dark Horse took it by surprise also, because I got royalties from that arc, and Dark Horse was like, we don't ever really give royalties. This is a strange phenomenon here.
So how did the fan base change? Because, I mean, the book starts, like, it's a top 10 book that month, which for Dark Horse is kind of unheard of.
Yeah.
And even at the time, like, doing over 100K of a book, the book definitely willed itself down to kind of a core fan base. How did the reaction kind of change from people who are reading it for you?
There are a lot of things where you can look back now and say what we did wrong, what we could have done right. And I think it suffered because it did not have, kind of like the way I feel, I hate to say it, about the Walking Dead comic book. It just doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. Like, okay, here you are, 100 issues. Where are you going? Are we going to go somewhere? Or is it just aimlessly walking and going? And I thought I think after issue 25 or something of Buffy, I wouldn't say that we jumped the shark, but there was definitely okay, where are we going? What are we doing? And have we been planning for this? And the truth is we hadn't been. So the idea of, here, let's end this at a certain issue then became an issue deep, well into the book. Because again, like I said, Joss and everybody involved was just having too much fun to say, well, where does this end exactly? Because everything that happens has to end somewhere. And that's where I think we suffered, if anything. And I think lost a lot of people in doing so.
Well, it's funny you say that, because that's always been Zach's big thing, is he's like, it has to end at some point. The Buffy story has to end, and I want it to end right. And then when they announced the end, he was like, he called me that day and he was like, it's ending. And I was like, what's ending? Like, is somebody dying? And he was like,
we're getting
the
divorced.
The book
It's
is
over.
ending. I was like, what are we talking about here?
Oh.
So it's funny. Oh no. And then when the final issue came, I got texts at school every like hour, like, the UPS guy is coming in 20 minutes. It's coming in
the
2 hours. Like
he's outside.
You mean
he's gathering the boxes.
The final issue of season 8 or the final issue of season 12?
12.
Of season 12.
okay.
I didn't know
season 8
of season 8. Yeah.
I didn't know you
We
then.
didn't
but
have to talk about the Giles death together.
no,
So
we
Giles
talked
is
about
gone.
it later.
Angel did it with a regular face instead of a vampire face. That's different. It makes it worse.
Yeah. But so it's funny that you say that you guys were worried about endings back then for that season, because then you were worried about endings in general.
Yeah, well, this obviously season 12 was felicitated because or Dark Horse just wasn't going to have the property anymore, so it had to end.
Yeah, I don't know the logistics in and out, but Fox grabbing all their properties up, I'm assuming that has something to do with the Disney deal of them buying up Fox properties. Like, you got to get your stuff back before we buy you up is kind of what I'm guessing is happening internally. But
Yeah, it's very muddy waters, but I can tell you that Dark Horse was very reluctant to let it go. And they definitely tried a lot to keep the universe, the Whedon universe, where it was. And Joss was very reluctant to let it go as well. So yeah, it's sad all around.
I think when season 11 was happening, I think when I was going through the numbers, I think Buffy was like their top, like, number 5 book they were doing at the time.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I can imagine they didn't want to let it go. But yeah, I assume it's due to the Disney acquisition of buying Fox up, and Fox is like, we need to get our stuff back together for this to happen.
Well, and I'm sure it hurt.
That's a stab in the dark, but
Well, it hurt even more.
Probably guess I'm not far off.
It hurt even more because I think I was told that actually Serenity sold more. The Serenity crowd is more of a comic crowd. And that book sold more, or used to sell more than Buffy, all things being fair.
I don't remember what their numbers looked like. I know, and it wasn't the one that you did. It was the Shepherd book.
Oh yeah, Chris
OGN
Semmy
was. Yeah, that was his. That was their number 1 selling graphic novel when that one came out. And I know that I'm real pissy about, because the story that you were doing at the end of the Firefly stuff, I'm like, all right, we're like, this is the last one that happened. I'm like, this is the Empire Strikes Back version of this story. Like, what's the next one? I'm like,
yeah, no, you're right.
It's not happening.
It was always proposed as a trilogy, and there was supposed to be another 6 or so issues coming into. Because I think obviously, like Empire, it finishes where, okay, you kind of resolved this, but there's a bigger issue here.
And I don't know if you listened to the podcast where we did it, but I'll blow it up. My favorite thing that you did for art that I've seen of yours, because I haven't seen everything, because who has? I mean,
it's been 25 years.
Massive body of work. But there's this page that you did of Zoe and the operative, and she throws him the gun, and you do this big pan out of the two of them just facing down, and you don't see
what happened.
The shootout, but Zoe walks out, and goddamn, man, that is one of my favorite pieces of art of all time, of just the two of them in the woods when you do that big pull out and you see like this Western style wide shot of the two of them facing down. I love that page in such a big bad way.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. And that was Zach Whedon who did the writing on that. And I'd mentioned to him, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, we don't explain any of that. Right, you're left up to the audience's imagination as to what happened. But she actually...
Oh, he's dead as hell.
Well, yeah, okay, you could say that, or you could say maybe he had a fatal wound and he got better. But I thought, wouldn't it be kind of cool if Zoe is kind of holding herself underneath maybe her arm or someplace, just to indicate in some way that she also got shot, but she's not doing anything about it until she gets inside because she doesn't want to ruin that moment. But I always thought, wouldn't it be cool if she actually got shot as well, which would leave you to wonder, well, did she win or did she lose? Or maybe the operative then said, I'm going to spare you because, I could just shoot you again and then you'd be dead.
My brain says that Zoe was faster with kind of like righteous vengeance. That's what I want to say. I want to say that Zoe shot him between the eyes. That's the end of it. That he didn't stand a chance up against, you were the fault for my husband's death. And also, if I die, shoot someone between the eyes.
Great.
Thank you. Be real fast with it. Zoe style.
It is funny though, because when we were first watching Firefly and then we watched Serenity, and when that happened, we turned off the Blu-ray and you immediately went and got the graphic novel and you were like, but you have to look at this page
Look at
now
that son of a
because you
bitch
have
die."
to see what happens. and so
Because he deserves every second. That's
so funny. That's probably the first piece of your work that I've ever seen as well.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like that one page, like
you
you
know,
have to look at this right
for as
now.
much as we're talking Buffy, that's my favorite thing that I've seen you do was that like wide shot of the two of them in the woods.
Yeah. Oh well, that's a big thing. I can tell you that about slipping things in intentionally or unintentionally. Joss was very big on not combining those two worlds because when I was doing Buffy, I thought, oh, can we have like some maybe like the Serenity behind her at some point, like a little toy, like an ornament or something, and all that. And he's like,
wasn't she wearing a Serenity tank
well,
top
that was
the cover?
the only thing I could ever get by him because the cover was done and I kind of did it, and it's a little obscured. But had Joss caught it in time, he probably would have said, no, redo the shirt because I don't want those two worlds meshing. So yeah, that was the only thing I could ever get by. And it was something I got. It's one of those things you sort of beg for forgiveness, then ask for permission. And I just didn't think about it at the
100%.
time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, because that was the issue 1B cover.
Yeah,
if
yeah.
memory serves.
Wow. Again, with the impressive amount of information that you know.
But yeah, I remember that. So I'm kind of curious about season 12 because that is such a tight story. How did it felt like that you had to draw smaller panels to cram in as much as humanly possible?
It was. There was very little fat on this story.
Oh yeah, no, there was.
Oh, it is so impressive what you guys
There's
did
a
on there.
couple-
I'm just so blown away.
Like the most you could do, like, maybe cut one fight page.
Yeah.
But beyond that, yeah, that is a tight story.
Which like you guys, I'm sure you love the banter, you love the back and forth between the characters, and I think that's what we kind of had to sacrifice by making it a shorter book and a tighter story. You don't get as much of the conversation, of the characters. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more of Andrew and how, where his life is and how he's affected by things going in, and just what happened to Satsu and where is everybody else since this is the end.
Oh, yeah, all the additional Slayers are gone.
Yeah,
which I understand the why of it.
I would have loved to have seen that sort of thing, but obviously given time and the constraints, I was always pushing too. It's like, you know what, fine, if this is 4 issues, where is it written that it has to be 22 pages? Let's make the last issue 10 pages longer. I'm sure everybody reading this is not going to want to get through it quickly.
Was it? Was there? What was the page? Was the page kind of different?
No. It was 22 pages, but I was lobbying for something to say, let's just make it a little bit longer because nobody wants this to end.
That's what you got. If we got 4 issues,
that's clever. I like that.
Get as much as we can in.
Yeah. So, but they're like, no, budget the way it is, and we got to make sure we can get the trade out on time, so we have to do it this way.
Well, it is very impressive, and
thank you.
It could not have ended better than it did. You guys.
I'm curious. Because it's only been like a week. How has the reaction been to the ending?
I've heard, pretty much positive things. Obviously, the most ongoing criticism is that it's so short. It was only 4 issues, and everyone's thinking, God, this could have been so much longer. And obviously,
I mean, that was the mandate though from Fox. There wasn't a choice.
No, there really wasn't. No, well, there wasn't a choice to say, if you want to do these issues singularly and then get out a trade, this is how it has to be, because the trade comes out in December, and I believe at the end of December they lose the they lose the franchise.
And it's weird that like they keep on saying like, oh, this is the end, but maybe we'll do more. I'm like, but you can't legally. You like, there's nothing like. What is?
Well,
this?
it's sort of
we can do.
It's
more.
Going out on a hopeful note. You never want to go, all right, this is it, we're done, get out of here, don't come back, lock the door, we're it.
Yeah, no, I like the hopeful note.
So do I. I'm an optimist.
I am too. That's why I'm always like, nobody needs to die in these things. And all along Zach was like, they're gonna kill one.
Right.
Somebody's gonna die at the end. And I was like, nobody's gonna die. Nobody's gonna die. And nobody died. It's the best.
You don't know Joss very well.
Yeah, I saw an interview with him who was like, we joked about the idea of killing everybody. I'm like, I'm too invested for you to kill everyone at this point.
Right. I think Illyria was the only real sacrifice you could say was in the book.
Yeah, but she's still alive.
Like
there's that note of hope as well. She's not totally gone.
She is, but I guess the difference there is that she's back in a situation where she was a tyrant, and that she would then embrace that life again.
Do you know if there was any attempt to connect Illyria's story to what happened with the IDW stuff with After the Fall? Because that ends with Illyria going to her full demon form and being all pissy, and she tries to end the world, versus this version of her going to her full form and saving the world. Do you know if there was any idea to connect those two stories, or is that just a happy coincidence?
I don't know what the official version would probably be. Yeah, it's a happy coincidence.
All right, I'll live with that. I'm fine. It totally works, so I don't care.
The real version was, Dark Horse and IDW were very separate, and never the twain shall meet in these two cases. So what they did, and what Dark Horse did, Dark Horse did. They didn't want any of the two rubbing off on one another.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked to Chris Rael, who edited all those books before, and yeah, that kind of seemed to be the impression.
Yeah.
That Dark Horse was like, we're a little bit pissed off that we sold these rights and you get to do stuff with them.
Pretty much.
And we'd like our money if we could.
That was it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that was the impression I got. Like, we want to get paid. We're so annoyed we sold these to you. But, money doesn't ever enter into stories.
Of course not. It doesn't shape the course of young men's lives.
It's only in the best interest of story. That's how everything happens, right?
Or young slave.
In my world, it is.
In your world, that's what you
I
want.
have a very rosy view on everything.
Your least favorite words that I say, it's like, if I say like contract negotiations, you're like, contracts. But what of the story?
Yes.
Come on, guys.
I know, that's why I like novels so much, because just there's not as many possibility of other people's interference, and there are, totally, but
fewer.
There are fewer instances, so.
So for you, I'm curious, what was the process like with working with different guys? Because you worked with some big name guys between like Whedon or Brian K. Vaughan or Brad Meltzer. These aren't small names.
Yeah, no, I was, man, it was one of those things, you don't get caught up in how big the storm is when you're right in the middle of it. And that's the way it was for me, because when I was working on a previous script with maybe Joss or somebody, they then say, well, here, we've got this coming up, and, Brian K. Vaughan is going to come in and do this, or Drew is going to come in here and do that. You don't have time to go, whoa, wait a minute, let me absorb the magnitude of this. You just kind of go, okay, well, I'll be done by this date, so hopefully they'll have a script for me at this date. And you just kind of accept that, all right, this is the way life is. And, that's what I meant when the most favorite part for me about doing the book was working with all of these great writers, because they turned in such great scripts. Brian K. came in, not just because him and Josh knew each other from Runaways, but he had been a huge Faith fan. And he was from is it Cleveland, or where's she from?
Yeah, that was the well, she's from Boston. The
Boston,
was in Cleveland.
Right. So he was like, I want to write Faith because I know that character. I know her. I'm from Cleveland myself, or Boston, and I know that character. And if I'm going to write anybody, I'm going to write her. That was the reason why her arc came so early in the book, in the beginning.
Because I bought some art off you a ways back. You sent me like, I forget what they're called, like these little like kind of books. They were kind of like explaining thing. That was from an unproduced video game script. Was the idea for that?
Yeah, that's what I heard. Where Faith goes after rogue slayers was an idea for an unproduced video game.
That's kind of cool.
It was, yeah.
That is, I mean, it turned out as also a cool comic arc, so it all works out. But
yeah, well, they fleshed it out, of course, and said,
definitely.
I love the idea. Because it was never really brought in, and I think once Faith got her own arc, we could really focus on this. But I always said the idea that Faith is always going to be second. As long as Buffy's around, she's always going to be number two. It's almost like siblings, where mom and dad love you the most, or in this case, dad, Giles, loves you the most, and you're the prettiest, and you're the prim, and you're the one who can do no wrong. And then there's me, and that's going to be the case. And I thought that really came to a great head when, Buffy or Faith is choking Buffy, not for any other reason other than I'm just so sick of being number two. I'm so sick of being in your shadow. And, that's why I remember drawing that with Buffy being very surprised that Faith was trying to kill her. Or it felt like, God, you really were going after me. This wasn't just a little angry tiff. This is really a big deal. And then, of course, she disappears before anything could happen. But I always thought that was a lot of telling in a story that you didn't get too much of from a character who's been beloved almost as much as Buffy.
Because there was a few characters in that arc that maybe Makes me think of it. How is it designing new either creature designs or character designs? Because you're not just dealing with the main core group. You had to go whole cloth for some new ones. What was that like for you?
Yeah, that's great. And that's always great as an artist. You come in there and you want to draw and you want to put your stamp on something and you want to make it like, hey, this is me. And I always had through all of it such great freedom. Joss was very giving, and all the writers coming in who hadn't written comics, they always eventually said, I will defer to you because you do this. I'm just sort of coming in as a guest star, but I will defer to you as how you think this should look or how you think this should play. So everyone was very generous with what they gave me visually. So a lot of what you see visually is just me. And that's why I could stick in so many little things here and there, little Godzillas and Hellboys and Doctor Who's and all of that, just because I was having fun with it. And, creating things like, here, where does Faith live? Okay, well, where does she live? And then you start thinking of things that maybe would be in her apartment, or what kind of a sweater would Joss wear? And I thought he probably was a big Beatles fan back in the day.
Yeah, that
so
yellow submarine.
Yeah, there's a yellow submarine.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, because you've done a few Beatles references in your stuff. There was the yellow submarine thing. There was the Serenity book that was the Abbey Road one.
Yeah, that was at the last minute. That thing was colored, inked, everything. It was ready to go. And at the last minute, Fox said, no, we're not going to do this. We can't allow this.
I was like, that's dumb. I wanted that one. Because I saw, the alt that went up and said, it was like, I want the Abbey Road one.
Yeah, because that was a thing I just naturally thought. Because we were trying to think of, that became very popular. Let's do an album, or a cover that kind of, there's a homage, what became known as homage covers. And somebody had mentioned Beatles. It might have been me or the editor at the time.
In episode 1 of Firefly, they do a Beatles reference. So the Beatles are still around. That's
yeah? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, because they have the fake signal for the Alliance to follow. They're like, cry, baby, cry, make your mother sigh, and they shoot off a fake signal that's like in a trash can.
Yeah. Because I took it one step further. I thought, well, what if, funny enough, they were actually walking across Abbey Road in the year, whatever, 23, whatever year they're in. Yeah. And I thought, well, what would Abbey Road look like now? And basically that's what I'd done. Because there are some telltale things. You still see the cars that were in the original Beatles. Yeah. And then I think I put Joss's birthday because supposedly it was Paul's birthday on one of the license plates. And, all of the things that were little catch things for the Abbey Road album, I tried to make it appropriate to the Serenity album. So if you look really hard.
Thing about Abbey Road. I didn't know that Paul's birthday was in there. I just learned a thing.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I think it's somebody's birthday or Paul's death. One of those two. It's one of those.
Like Paul is dead thing.
Yeah, and then that's why River is barefoot.
She's barefoot half the time anyway.
Paul is barefoot too, but you'll notice the same characters are the same characters as the Beatles, and River is barefoot because Paul was barefoot and all of that. So, and then of course Mal is John, so he's in front and all of that. So I thought, it was really clever. I don't give myself that credit often, but I thought it was really clever. And it got yanked at the last minute, and so I had to kind of draw this little patch to put over it with just the, basically it looks weird, but they're all standing in the middle of the street getting ready. Yeah.
You should have gone with hey, they referenced the Beatle in episode 1. Like, come on. Like, it's part of the universe.
Well, I'll take you one further because Fox was okay. The Simpsons did an Abbey Road reference years and years ago.
Yeah, that was the Rolling Stone. They did those. There was Nirvana, Bruce Springsteen, and the Beatles. They did those covers.
And they were okay with that. So we were kind of arguing.
Be like that.
Oh, I know. It makes me laugh because you have mentioned every single one of his favorite things in this world in this interview. And that just makes me laugh. Like Serenity, Firefly, Simpsons. He has a tattoo of the Beatles on his arm. Like literally everything. It is just so
Beatles
funny.
And Serenity are tattooed on the same arm.
Yep.
This will be the best interview ever.
Oh my gosh, it just makes me laugh so much, though.
Yeah, because let's say that's 2003, 2004. Rolling Stone had The Simpsons recreate famous covers. So yeah, they did Abbey Road. They did what's the name of that Nirvana album?
Oh, was it Smells Like Teen Spirit?
Yeah. Whatever that album is, and then they did what was the Springsteen with Born in the USA? Yeah,
Born in the USA with the jeans and the handkerchief. Yeah.
Yep.
But it does just make me laugh. So somehow, and Godzilla, like literally, you've mentioned all of his favorite things in this world. So That is just so funny.
We're going to have to go back to your counter there and just start mentioning off all of the characters. And speak a little about all of them.
We could just go around, go down the line.
go through the
Next up is King Kong. Like,
is that
who's references on Buffy?
Who's that in the middle with the blue pants? I can't figure that one out.
That one?
Yeah.
That's Cordelia.
Oh, Cordelia. Was there a doll? I know there was a plastic action figure.
Or is it? Yeah.
Oh, okay. And her, yeah.
I bought those in a comic shop years and years ago. They were in a discount bin for like a couple bucks a pop, so I just bought them.
No, I never saw that one. Wow, that's cool.
I had them in their packages for years. I'm not normally that guy, but I just had them. But then I took them out one day to put them up, and all of the glue just let go. I'm like, well, I don't care anymore. Let's just take them out. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, those plastic cases become yellow after a while. And you're like, oh, maybe I should open it on principle.
It didn't matter. I was like, oh, no, they've lost their value. I'm like, whatever. I don't care.
Funny.
It was literally just, the glue let go of the boxes. I was like, who cares?
Yeah, I've got a couple books like that.
You've had a long run on the book. What were kind of the challenges that came up with it?
I know, this is going to have to be a two-parter.
I know.
Was staying on schedule, actually. Really trying to... I hate the idea that there were so many fill-in. Not because... Well, yeah, as an artist, you want to do everything. And you want everything to be you. But I was really diligent about taking the time and really putting in the effort. And I just hated the fact that there had to be fill-in of other good stories that I really wanted to do. I totally regret not doing the fifth issue where...
Yep.
The Unknown Slayer. I was like, I read that script and I thought this was great.
Cliff Richards, I think.
Yeah, that was Cliff Richards. Oh, no, that was...
Memories.
No, that was the other one. Not Cliff, but he did a lot of Buffy also.
I thought it was him. I might be wrong, though.
Oh, God. It was... if I didn't have anything packed up, too, I could look at it.
Up.
It's the other Buffy artist, because he had done a lot of stuff while Cliff was also doing books. Weeks. I want to say it's not Weeks.
Buffy season 8, number 5. Who did it? Paul Lee.
I knew it was a Lee somewhere.
See, you were in there. Yeah. Lee Weeks.
Yeah, and then, you were back at issue 6.
Yeah.
I'm, at this point, I'm just looking at Wikipedia telling you things that you did.
Yeah, that was when the
What a great interview.
Remember this?
Yeah, I mean, I hated to turn down that issue, but there was no way I was going to turn down the Faith arc. Because I just thought that was way, way too good.
There must have been a bit of a reprieve, because when Carl Moline came back and did the Frey stuff, that totally made sense, just because, he was the guy who did it before.
Well, that was a mandate. It's funny, I didn't know Carl at the time, and Carl was very, and rightly so, he's like, no, that's my character. I want to draw that character. Because I was saying to Joss, well, why don't I do all the stuff that happens in the real time, and then he can do all the stuff that happens in the future. And Carl's like, no, I want it. I want it all. I'm going to do it all. And I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. All right,
well, whatever.
That's what happened with the Jeff Loeb issue.
Right. Well, that one was always intended because that cartoon interlude was supposed to be one of the animated cartoons.
Yeah, because you did this. The
bookends. Yeah, the two bookend pieces, which, it fits in the context of it all.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And then the illustrators on that, those were a couple of the illustrators who were actually drawing the animated version at that time.
Yeah, that was a kind of badass way to sneak that in.
It was really cool.
It was never going to see the light of day, so if you're going to find a way to make it work.
Yeah, unfortunately, but that was a great way. And again, we were so busy, or they were so busy having fun, they didn't realize, well, this is another issue, guys. This is another month that we're going to take out of continuity from this big, story we're telling. So it really got away from us to a certain degree.
How did you react to the Twilight reveal that Diamond screwed up?
I actually mentioned that to Scott Alley, a friend of mine here who's a huge Buffy fan. Hey, Robert. He had said...
Hey, Robert, how's it going?
He works in a comic shop, and he texted me saying, hey, did you see that this cover just came out through Diamond Solicitations? And I was like, oh, no. What? I thought they were going to use this as a big reveal. Why did they do this? So I just texted Scott, my editor, saying, hey, I thought this was going to be a surprise. What happened? And then he's like, what? And he called me. He called me right back. Oh, what? Did you do this? What was this something? Did you let it go? I'm like, no, this wasn't me. I'm asking you what happened. And he's like, I don't know. Let me get back to you. And that was a thing. And then later on, I'd heard, man, that was a very intense meeting. And Joss apparently doesn't get mad very often, but he had some choice words apparently at that meeting.
Yeah, because I remember they ended up like changing their solicitation afterwards to only like show part of the cover. I'm like, guys, it's too late. We all know.
And then even so, they tried to reword it saying, you may know who it is, but you don't know the half of it. And it's like, yeah, we got caught with our pants
no, we
down.
all know what it is. It's out there. Huh. Because I remember when that happened, I was like, that was a mistake. I wasn't like angry at it. I was just like, well, you messed up. That's unfortunate. Very much so. We definitely got caught with our pants down on that one. And then it became something in marketing or something. They just had the wrong cover. They didn't realize, not all of it was supposed to be shown. And there was, because you ended up doing that Barack cover. Yeah, the Barack Obama cover, yeah. Yeah, that was the Amazing Spider-Man homage cover that was like Barack instead of... Yeah, the reveal of Hobgoblin, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
I know. That's funny. I actually remember it because I read this all in trade later. And so I was reading through these issues and I got to the one where it was spoiled in the solicitations. And he was like, do you want to see what the cover was that I saw at this point, or do you want to keep reading? And I was like, I'll just keep reading. It's more fun this way. So it wasn't spoiled for me.
Oh, good.
Yeah, good. I mean, it was only 2 months. It wasn't that big of a deal at that point.
I always wondered how big of a reveal was it that Angel was Twilight?
It was surprising to me.
It was a 1 in 3 chance.
Right, because there could only be a certain number of people.
Because there was, I want to say it was issue 10 that you drew that like Buffy does kind of the crotch up, like split you in half.
Right, and he says, I know that move.
Yeah, yes. So that narrows it down to Spike, Angel, or Caleb. And at the time, with the IDW stuff happening, which we didn't know at the time was happening before all of this, I assumed it was Caleb just because Angel and Spike were doing something that at the time I thought was simultaneous.
Okay.
So I was sold on the Caleb idea of it. I'm like, well, out of the 3 people, 2 of them are doing something and I know what it is, and there's only 1 of them left.
Right.
So that was my
always,
read of it.
That was always a constant, and Joss had that from the get-go. Because
there's the whole, like, he throws a church at her. I'm like, that's real Caleb-like.
Yeah. And she's like, go ahead, church me.
Yeah. Oh, good. Someone else remembers the dialogue, too. It's not just me.
But yeah, we went back and forth with that mask, too. That was a big thing. Joss really wanted the jacket because in retrospect, he wanted people to go back and go, oh, look, he's wearing a trench coat. Okay, not a big thing. And I was thinking of sort of a wrestler's mask. And while I thought that given this character was such a big deal, we would go back and forth forever with this. And in all honesty, I did a couple of drawings here and there, and Joss settled on one and said, yeah, I love it. Let's go with that.
Yeah, it's very luchador-esque, the way the mask ended up.
Yeah. And I was like, really? That's it? You don't want to debate? You don't want to fight about it a little bit? He's like, no, let's go.
He has too many belts that a man would need. Who needs more than 1?
Exactly.
3 is too many belts.
And to this credit, there was only one time I've ever seen anybody cosplay as Twilight, which was so cool. Yeah.
Well, in the 10 years. Shows, I like to play a drinking game, which is you have to take a shot every time you see a Harley and every time you see a Negan, you have to take a drink.
But we don't actually play this as a drinking game because
we would die.
But it is a fun game to watch. Yeah.
If you see a mashup, you have to take 2 drinks because those exist. I've never seen a Twilight one though.
No, I haven't either. But I like that. Maybe this year.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be at this point. It's been a while. That'd be a deep pull now.
Yeah,
if
that really would. Yeah, because like I said, I saw it back when that was popular, and I haven't seen one since.
I mean, they just don't want to buy that many belts. like 3 belts.
And here, Andrew made very specific instructions as to that's why they don't wear belts.
That reminds me in a big roundabout way. You had to recreate some stuff that Walt Simonson did. What was that like?
Oh, yeah, that big Teen Titans X-Men thing. Yeah, that was the writer.
That was Brad Meltzer on that.
Brad Meltzer, yeah, who was coming in, and he loved the idea of just putting everything in the kitchen sink in there. And
that was
he basically
the big comic book yard. It's like we're gonna make like all these references, and we're gonna have like the insane like space sex and through a mountain thing.
And he had very specific ideas as to the homage covers. He wanted every cover to be a homage cover. So it was a huge deal as we were doing it. And it was I had to reference it, but any comic aficionado would know it and remember it. I didn't really understand the relevance of it, to be honest with you, as much.
It didn't do anything, but it was just a fun reference.
Because if you'll notice too, there was the bridge of the Enterprise was in that also, and then Andrew gets to dress up in a cavalcade of armor.
Yeah, I don't understand how licensing like that works.
I didn't either. I think because it was in pieces, it wasn't necessarily accurate. If you're just seeing a glove or you're just seeing a shield or, just a piece of something you could get away with.
Yeah, I remember seeing them like, boy, that is a licensing nightmare.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is the reaction you're supposed to have.
I think, true comic fans will get it. But even so, doing it, you can say, well, all right, that's sort of left up to a interpretation.
I don't know. So I guess if we're going to kind of come up to our ending, reflecting on the whole thing, how has this kind of been for your career? How do you kind of look back on this whole 11-year ordeal?
It was something that I will forever be indebted to Scott Alley for. Because when this first came about, I was like everybody else. I was like, Buffy, really? I'm not as interested in doing that. And at the time, I was offered The Flash. I think Mark Waid was going to be drawing it, and they were going to reintroduce it. And they were really looking at me to do the book. And I thought, wow, that's what I want to do. That's because I'm a comic book artist. That's what I want to do. And Scott, when I told Scott this, he was very candid and to his credit, the guy had the wisdom of Solomon. And he said, look, how many people have drawn The Flash over the years? And said, you will never be remembered for The Flash. If you do this, you will forever be remembered for Buffy. And of course, at that time, you don't believe it, but true enough, that prophecy came to pass.
I think Freddie Williams took over around that time, if memory serves.
For The Flash?
I think so.
Yeah, I can't remember who that was, but that was when he had the Speed Force and he had his kids. Like he had 2 kids and all that, and that's when I was supposed to jump on.
I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say it was Freddie Williams.
Yeah, it could have been.
Oh, I have no idea, but I believe all of you.
And the best thing...
I remember that a lot less than I remember Buffy.
The best thing about doing Buffy is that it's allowed me to travel literally to the other side of the world. I've gone to Australia, to the UK, to Paris, just pretty much everywhere on the strength of this love for this character, and I could not be more humbled and more grateful for this sort of thing. It's been a great ride. If I'm never remembered for anything else, I don't consider it to be a bad thing that I'm remembered as the Buffy artist.
I mean, I can tell you within the comic shop that I have and within our house, you're up there.
You are well represented, so thank you.
We got you up in frame.
It is beautiful.
I'm hoping it's not the only thing I'll ever do, so...
No. So, we don't worry. It's also not the end of our comic art buying, I'm sure. So
yeah, I mean, for us, it's not a bad representation to have up.
Which, in a weird way, I'm way more proud of the work I did on Serenity, just because I think it looks a lot better than. I mean, I love what I did on Buffy, and I'm very proud of that. But I think I really nailed the Serenity stuff. There's very few times where you look at something going, okay, this is the way it should look. And I always look at Serenity now. I can barely look at a lot of things that I do in hindsight, but I look at Serenity thinking, this had the really good artist. This had a really good writer. This had a really good colorist. This had a really good inker. Okay, and I was a part of that.
I have a Serenity question then. With the character of B, if there's any fault that Firefly and Serenity has, it's a mix of Asian and American culture. We just don't have Asians.
And that was
weird.
me.
So,
yeah.
You were the one who's like, we should make B Asian because where are the Asians?
Yeah, because Zach was like, well, there's this character. Her name is B. And, he just had Beatrice. And a name like that doesn't sound like it's Asian or Pan-American or anything like that. And I was like, well, do you have a reference to her? And I guess we could make her black. Everybody sort of has the go-to black. And they're like, well, wait a minute. We've already got Jubal and we've already got the operative coming in. That seems like a lot of black people in this thing. Let's maybe we shouldn't have so many black people doing this. And
it definitely, a show that's supposed to be half Asian definitely lacked Asians.
Yeah, and for all the listeners out there, I am half black, so I say this with a sense of irony. Because I always thought, man, even I can feel like you guys just put a lot of black people in here or Spanish people in here just to have that quota be done. So I did. I mentioned it to him. Well, what if, obviously in this future, everybody's mixed to the point of a soup. She is very much an Asian character. And he's like, yeah, okay. They were very like, yeah, okay, if you want to make her Asian, go ahead. There was never a reference to her being Asian.
Because, boy, that series, that desperately lacked Asian representation in a book that's supposed to be, or in a series or book or however you want to call it, supposed to be half Asian, where no one was Asian.
Yeah,
but that was a stunt guy that got stabbed in the movie. I'm like, oh boy, look at that one guy who's dead.
But that was my that was my one little contribution to the whole series, was that I got
that makes sense in a big way, because
it was well needed.
That and what she wore, because I thought she was very much a fan of Mal Reynolds, and a lot of the way she wears is very Mal-like. You'll notice if you go back and look at her, she wears a lot of what kind of he wore, and she's basically honoring him because of his legend from from Miranda, from the whole Miranda thing.
No, that series just frustrates me because I want it to have a proper ending.
I do too, man. I kind of hope maybe or a Boom will call me and said, "Hey, remember that series? Are you interested in finishing it?"
But I've very briefly, I was talking to Greg Pak about it. I was like, "Hey, man, are these connected in any way, shape, or form?" He's like, "No, but I've read them." It's like, that's a start.
That is a good start.
They're doing prequels, is what I'm told.
Yeah, so they're shooting for 12, and I was, I'm gonna just kind of do whatever I can to gently nudge things. Like, there's an unfinished story. You don't just need to fill in gaps.
Yeah.
Might be a thing you want to tackle at some point, because they're reprinting them. That was in this month's order. I think it's going to be because Volume 1 was in this month's order, and
that's what.
Volume 1. I'm going to guess they're going to do it in 2 volumes.
Sure. And they're doing it in the difference there is they're doing it in softcover, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, because my understanding is Boom for licensed property doesn't do hardcovers.
Oh, really? Okay, that just made me think that the hardcovers will become a lot more sought after.
A couple months back, Dark Horse put them on liquidation.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was like if shops wanted to order them, they were like $2. Which is great when you're a shop. That really should have been my indication that the property was getting sold.
Yeah, I know, right?
When they put them on liquidation.
Every time I do a show, I try to buy the books that I do and sell them at shows, and that is my best seller. Are the Serenity books, bar none.
Well, I think this has been so lovely, and thank you so much for giving us so much of your time.
Not at all. If you guys ever want to talk again, give me a heads up. I love this sort of thing. I've got the gift of gab, so I will talk all day.
It's been so fun, and that's the most fun part is when we talk to somebody who loves this clearly so much.
And that's just it. I'm a fan. I am a professional, and I do sit on that side of the table, but at the end of the day, I'm just as much of a fan. I was geeking out recently as a comic shop owner, that Mike Mignola Dracula hardcover just came out with a black and white movie adaptation, and I was like, oh my god, I was geeking over this for a straight week.
I've been into the Buffy stuff since day one. I was part of those 100,000 copies that sold. I was there. I still, and when I started up my shop, it's one of those things that everything you own is suddenly something that you sell.
Sure.
But I still have my Buffy #1, the one that I bought off the shelf day one, 11 years ago.
Look at that.
I know.
That is one of the very few that I hung on to. I sold every other Buffy issue that I bought, but the #1 I saved.
Well, someday you'll have to get it signed.
That sounds great.
Which is annoying because I met you 8 years ago. I just didn't have it with me.
Then I blame you for this.
I know, right?
Yeah, well, I bought a print and then I sold it for profit, so there's that.
Whatever. Well, the next time you come up to the Northeast, for a con.
But I've bought original art since then, so ultimately you win.
Yeah, somebody's trying to get me to go to that Granite Con. Are you familiar with that one?
Granite State.
State, yeah.
Yeah.
We've been to that one before.
That was a great show.
It's pretty close to my parents, which is nice.
Cool.
It just passed a few weeks ago, but yeah, that show does a really good job of being well lit and being packed, but still managing to keep appropriate amounts of space in between tables.
Oh yeah, cool.
So it's one of my favorite shows that we've done because it was packed, but it wasn't cramped, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'll definitely have to take him up on it next year.
it's a rarity to see a show like that where it's like, oh my god, there's a ton of people here. We have room to breathe.
It's a nice combo.
Except for those people behind us that drop stuff on us that I yelled at.
Oh, whatever.
Eh,
But
whatever.
that was a year ago, so who cares? But yeah, if you're ever up in the Northeast, let us know.
I will
We'll probably
for
be
sure.
around.
Yeah, Granite State's actually a good show. I recommend it.
Great. Good to hear.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so fun.
And
Imagine
again,
listeners
thank
where
you.
occasionally just break out into shop talk.
I know.
And
like
another
6
thing.
times.
I know, you're like, and I know, this is my life. He's just like, so here are the 17 things I learned from Diamond today, and this is what my order looks like. That's cool, I guess.
Boom Studios is my number 3 order this month. I think partially because of the Firefly
Like
stuff.
that's a
Wow.
fun fact that
Yeah,
is
they're beating out
not useful to most people.
They're beating Image and Dark Horse for what I ordered this month.
Oh.
Boom's
Really?
number 3. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, Marvel's the clear winner than DC.
Sure.
And then I was looking at my numbers. I'm like, oh wow, Boom is number 3. I
Yeah.
don't
And
know
it's
if Boom
funny,
has ever been number 3.
I really hope they put their popularity where their money is, and I feel a lot of these smaller companies don't necessarily pay for the talent per se. And I hope now that Boom has sort of stepped up a bit that they'll definitely say, you know what, let's get some really good guys to come in because these are important properties.
I think
yeah.
Disney's going to end up owning them, I think, because I think Fox is the majority shareholder
Ah, really?
for Boom, so I'm going to guess it's going to be going to Disney in the next few months.
That makes sense.
We'll see. Hey, everyone,
Which is
hope you
also-
enjoyed that talk.
Yeah.
Which is weird, though, because if you notice, Dark Horse is doing Netflix stuff. And I thought Netflix was their own entity.
I mean, they bought all Mark Millar's stuff.
Yeah. It's weird how things are just being cut up and shaken and all of that these days.
I know, and that new Buffy series, I think that's just going to be a whole new canon. It's like the one image they released was like Buffy with a smartphone in high school. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't around in 97.
Yeah, I know. Well, that too, I'm told, is a prequel. They're going back to school, right?
But if she has, I'm going to say new canon if she has a smartphone.
Right, yeah.
Which seems like a big time saver. Like, oh, what are we going to do? I don't know. Let's look it up.
Hey, Google, where's the Hellmouth?
Yeah. So helpful.
There has to be some weird, like, dark internet forum about this somewhere.
The
don't
dark
know.
net, exactly.
But I think that's about what we have. Thank you very much for coming out.
Anytime. Thank you guys for having me.
I greatly appreciate it.
And we'll talk to you later, I guess.
Yeah, we'll
Right
have this
back at
up
ya.
in 2 weeks.
Oh, lovely.
I
So we're speaking to you from the future, everyone.
I know. I never know when everything's coming out. I'm like, oh, that's fun.
Well, I'm going to cut it tomorrow, but then it'll be up in 2 weeks.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, fun times. Thank you very much.
Anytime, guys.
And
Thank
I-
you.
And very much because I've been following this for so damn long. Thank you for everything you did on the book. It was a damn fun ride.
It was a labor of love, my friend.
Well, thank you.
It shows.
Oh.
All right. Well,
All right.
we'll
Have a
talk
good
to you
night.
later.
Thank you for your work.
Yeah, this has been really great.
No,
Thank
we-
you so much for taking this much
Okay.
time with us.
Yeah.
We
Anytime. If
appreciate
you guys need something else, just give a ring.
We will, for sure.
Thank you very
Have
much.
a great night.
Have a
All
good
right,
night.
Zach. See you, Emily.
Bye.
Bye.